What's the good word, Josh? Your boy DKB here. So, kind of wanted to talk about Zach Wilson post Kansas City Chiefs game, right? There's been a lot of discussion, two extreme sides of the argument, right? You have on one hand the people that say Zach Wilson has officially turned a corner. We've never seen him perform like this in any setting, practice, mini camp, training camp. All of the regular season games before this. A lot of people like to highlight that, he plays best with his back up against the wall. And this is the first time, or at least one of the few rare times, we're really seeing him play extremely well under duress. And then you have the guys on the other side of the spectrum that are saying, this doesn't change a single thing. Zach Wilson is what we've seen, for the last 20 plus games. And, we're going to need to see this more consistently throughout the season before we even begin to shift the conversation. So, since that game, we had NFL Network. They were just recently chatting about this. Michael Robinson was a guy that repeatedly, he admits this himself, criticized Zach Wilson. He's criticized Nathaniel Hackett and how Zach Wilson's been developed, the utilization, all of these different things. But more specifically for this season, Nathaniel Hackett has not fared well with Zach Wilson being thrust into the starting role until that Kansas City Chiefs game. I'm not sure what happened. Maybe, as everybody's been saying, the trust is continuing to be built up to a certain level where Nathaniel Hackett doesn't feel the need to hold back the playbook from Zach Wilson anymore, and we can really start letting things rip around the field. But for whatever, and I'm definitely on board with it. I'm a guy that wanted Zach Wilson out of the building. I've said it a bunch of times. I am not going to change my mind 180 degrees just because he had a excellent career game for himself. Consistency is something that's eluded the New York Jets as a whole for a long time, and that's something I want to see. The one game won't just change that, but I do think everything in context is worth examining. And so they discussed this, obviously Michael Robinson being the biggest factor here since he's heavily criticized the team. He mentioned all the things that we all said we loved from the Kansas City Chiefs game, right? We've seen him get to rip it down the field, deep shots, intermediate shots, play action. We're minimizing the amount of responsibilities he has in terms of running through his progressions. We got the run game involved. We got big plays from there. Some people think maybe we should have ran a little bit more, but you had Zach Wilson looking the best he's ever had. So that's a game where you don't feel bad about keeping the ball in his hands with what he was able to accomplish. One of the more interesting pieces from this, though, that came up during that conversation was Daniel Jones versus Zach Wilson. And really you can apply any lower tier quarterback into this conversation, right? But since they were talking about New York as a whole, that's the conversation that we got. This game has shifted so many minds of a lot of, analysts that I respect, that I've seen, report on the New York Jets for a while, NFL experts just as a whole. There's definitely a shift after this game. Again, nationally televised. I think I've seen something like it was the most watched game since the Super Bowl or something along those lines, right? Last time that we was on here was the butt fumble. So if we were going to change the narrative for the season, this was definitely the game to do it. And while we would have loved to win, this still was a feel-good moment around the league, and I think opened up some eyes, especially if this is the first time you're seeing Zach Wilson. The Daniel Jones versus Zach Wilson conversation, to me, I would have thought would have been skewed 100% towards the Giants. Everybody on that panel essentially selected Zach Wilson if they had to build an offense around somebody. And keep in mind, Daniel Jones is also a former high pick. Overrated or overdrafted, much like we would probably debate with Zach Wilson. I think Daniel Jones was picked number 10th. Nobody really had Daniel Jones going to maybe the late first, early second, something like that. But it's an interesting argument to think about, right? You could throw, again, any lower tier guy right now. I'm thinking like Justin Fields. You have your Mac Jones. Not sure what's happening with the power rankings per se, but let's just go off the basis of those three guys, right? Daniel Jones, Mac Jones, and you have Justin Fields, right? All of these guys have been struggling to various points over their career. It's more interesting to me about the Daniel Jones conversation because you've seen him have tremendous success under his brand new head coach and Brian Daboll, offensive guru, which many people will label him. And so you've seen him inexplicably take his team to the playoffs, earned himself that crazy, I think he's making like $40 million a year on average, contract with the Giants. And then you turn around and you see, the clunker that he just had, 10 sacks. They've had, I think it was 10 or 11 sacks. He threw the pick six. There's a lot of craziness going on with it. Zach Wilson has all the tools, though. This has been a huge conversation for any Zach truther, as we would say. The arm strength, the escapability as his superhero power, as Robert Saleh will put it. The ability to move around, slide around in the pocket. Pocket presence, probably not the best, but at least the ability to be able to move around the pocket is great. And then just the ability to play off schedule and throw from any platform are huge calling cards. And realistically, if you're going to rattle off a bunch of quarterback traits that you would want to see, Zach Wilson fits the mold from a physical standpoint on a lot of those. So it's an interesting dynamic to hear about this kind of shift here. And, this game was probably the best version of Zach Wilson that I can say we've seen, right? It was confidence in this game versus the carelessness that we've seen in a lot of others when we've seen him try to rip it and play hero ball and stuff. Play action obviously was a huge highlighted part of this game plan, something we've been asking for a while, but the run game was lagging behind and we couldn't really get it going. We've seen how things operated once we had to force a defense to loosen up some of them 7, 8, 9-man boxes that were coming around. And so I think we're looking at the precipice of a good formula for a team that doesn't necessarily need to rely 80% on the running game to kind of save the season, if you will. Winning with Zach Wilson, it's a very different argument here. A lot of us had thought that the defense needed to be perfect, the running game needed to be excellent, and we may need on occasion, a huge play. In general, we were talking about a scoring possession here from special teams in order to pull off victories. But with a game like this from Zach Wilson, and if there's any realistic consistency to this, you're talking about now the New York Jets are back in the conversation of not just being underdogs in every game. You're giving him a legitimate chance to go out there and say that we can be the better opponent right out of the gate with a lot of these people, even though there's still a lot of stuff to fix up. And ultimately, it's probably a feel-good moment for Robert Saleh. He's been crapped on a lot. A lot of people, take a look at the win-loss record for Robert Saleh. They don't think he's a great coach. Maybe a good one, maybe solid, maybe terrible, depends on where you fall on the spectrum, but nobody's really calling him a great head coach, excellent, elite, none of those verbiages. And a lot of it is based around the winning, but a lot of it is also based around the decision and the continuous support that he's given Zach Wilson. So if this truly is a turning point for the New York Jets and Zach Wilson in this season, you gotta think that Robert Saleh's confidence it was rewarded this Sunday. So I don't know, just some food for thought. Personally, again, I want to see the consistency there. Does he have to, throw for 70% completion rates and 2 touchdowns with 250 yards on the board every game? Absolutely not. But I do want to see some version of mistake-free football, at least when it comes to interceptions, low fumble rates, and just the confidence in the decision-making that we've seen from him. Literally 2.5 seconds or less on the clock for the majority of his throws, and he's slinging that thing around. So it was fun to see. If this is the version of Zach we're going to see for the foreseeable future, I would say that, he could quickly turn around the conversation of him being a bust and definitely move the needle away from him being one of the worst quarterback drafted in the modern era of football, which will be a huge achievement for this coaching staff. Nathaniel Hackett will have his pick of any head coaching job available by the time he decides to move on, if he does indeed turn around, the garbage, as they say, that was Zach Wilson. But let me know what your thoughts are in this conversation, specifically when it comes to Zach Wilson, and if you choose him over certain other quarterbacks to build an offense around, given what we just seen. And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.